The rain tapped impatiently against the windows of Greycourt Manor as a pale moon fought through a veil of fog. Inside the grand study, a fire crackled weakly, its warmth unable to touch the cold reality of the scene. Sir Alistair Wycliffe, philanthropist and industrial titan, lay slumped over his mahogany desk, a delicate silver letter opener buried in his chest. Chapter 1. The Silent Study. The storm rolled across the English countryside like a living creature. Growling, restless, hungry. Sheets of rain hammered the stone walls of Greycourt Manor, a sprawling estate whose grandeur had faded into melancholy shadows over the years. A single wing of the manor was lit that night. The study, its tall windows glowing faintly through the fog. Inside, a tragedy had unfolded, one that would bring Hercule Poirot out of the comfort of his warm London flat and into the heart of a family drowning in secrets. Poirot entered the study with slow, deliberate steps, his polished shoes clicking softly on the marble floor. The room smelled faintly of tobacco, wet earth, and something floral he could not yet identify. A fire crackled in the hearth, but it did little to warm the icy atmosphere. Death had a way of draining warmth from a room, and here Death sat at Sir Alistair Wycliffe's desk, silent, unmoving, utterly final. Sir Alistair's lifeless body leaned forward slightly, head bowed, one arm draped over the desk as if reaching for something he could not grasp in time. A silver letter opener protruded from his chest, elegant, sharp, almost ceremonial. Poirot observed the weapon with a raised brow. "A curious choice," he murmured, leaning closer. "A man does not ordinarily meet his end by an object meant to open correspondence." Inspector Graves, a tall, rigid man with a stern moustache and an expression permanently set to disapproval, stood stiffly by the doorway. His uniform was damp from the rain, and his frustration was evident. "We found him like this about half an hour ago," Graves said. "The butler discovered the body and called us immediately. He also sent for you." Poirot looked up mildly. "Ah, and why call for me, Inspector? Do you not feel equal to the task?" Graves bristled. "The family insisted. They trust your reputation." "Or," Poirot said softly, "they fear that the truth will not be as they wish it to be. Very well. Let us see what the little grey cells will uncover." He began his examination, starting not with the body, but with the room itself. His eyes swept across the Persian rug, the polished surfaces, the bookshelves that lined the walls like silent sentinels. A glass decanter sat on a side table, one glass empty, another half full. The faint steam rising from the teacup on the desk caught Poirot's attention. "One cup," Poirot said, "is freshly poured. The other," he gently touched the teacup's rim, "has cooled. This suggests Sir Alistair was not alone earlier this evening." Graves crossed his arms. "We haven't determined who the second cup belongs to. The staff claim he was working alone." Poirot's eyes narrowed, and the staff speak truth without hesitation. "Ah, non, mon ami. In cases of murder, truth hideth behind fear." Near the fireplace, a torn piece of paper lay half crumpled on the rug. Poirot bent to pick it up. Half of a sentence remained. "You broke your promise." His brows lifted slightly. "Promises," Poirot whispered, "are curious things. To break one, to betray one, that can lead a person to violence, oui? But what was the promise that cost Sir Alistair his life?" Graves approached. "We found the other half burned in the fire. Couldn't salvage it." Poirot turned the torn edge over between his fingers. Someone attempted to destroy it quickly. A message that the killer did not want read. He placed the note fragment onto the desk carefully. Then he leaned forward, inspecting the area around the body. A faint indentation on the dusting of ash near the fireplace caught his eye. Something small and delicate had fallen there, a petal crushed under a heel. Poirot picked it up with a handkerchief. It was white, fragrant, unmistakably belonging to a gardenia. "A woman's flower," Poirot murmured. "Or perhaps a man who seeks a certain flourish. There is always this possibility." He held it to the light. The petal was slightly wilted, but fresh enough to have been dropped in the last hour. Graves frowned. "Gardenias aren't common around here, not in this season." Poirot nodded. "Which means someone brought it with them. Interesting." His gaze shifted back to the desk. Sir Alister's left hand lay partially clenched, as though he had been reaching for something. Perhaps the note, perhaps the weapon, or perhaps even the killer. A smear of ink near his fingertips suggested he had been writing moments before his death. Poirot examined the desk further. The ink bottle was open, the pen still wet. A blank sheet of paper sat directly in front of the dead man. He intended to write something, or perhaps to finish what he had started on the torn note. Poirot tapped his chin. The killer must have arrived before he could complete it. He turned to Graves. "Tell me, Inspector, are the family present in the manor?" "All of them," Graves replied. "The storm kept everyone indoors. Lady Evelyn is upstairs in her room. The protégé, Michael Harrow, is pacing the hallway like a caged fox. The maid, Clara Davin, is distraught and keeps insisting Sir Alister feared something tonight. Dr. Felix Arden was the last to see him alive, around an hour before the body was discovered. And Beatrice Rowan, his business partner, arrived shortly before the call was made." Poirot's eyebrows rose slightly. "Ah, a full house of potential motives." He walked toward the window, peering at the rain streaming down the glass. "You see, Inspector, the manor is a stage tonight. A stage with actors, secrets, lies, and one truth which hides itself very cleverly." Poirot paused, noticing something else. A faint smudge on the windowsill. He touched it carefully. "Soil," he said. "Fresh soil. Someone opened this window not long ago." Graves hurried over. "Impossible. It was locked when we found the body." Poirot smiled gently. "But was it locked by the killer, or by your officers? A small detail, perhaps forgotten." He bent down and found a faint trail of soil leading from the window toward the far side of the room. Someone came in, or more likely escaped, through this window. But in this weather, he glanced at the storm outside. A foolish risk, unless the person had no choice. Poirot stepped back, studying the room from a distance now, as though taking in a painting rather than a crime scene. Every detail mattered. Every object spoke. His eyes returned to the teacups. He picked up the cooler one and sniffed. "A trace of perfume," he murmured. "Gardenia again. The mysterious visitor was here in this room, drinking tea with Sir Alister." Poirot placed it down gently. "Women often choose such scents, though not always. But I suspect, Inspector, this smell will lead us to the killer." A soft creak sounded from the hallway. Poirot turned sharply. The butler, Mr. Davin, stood in the doorway, his uniform immaculate despite the chaos. "Sir," Davin said with a trembling voice, "Lady Evelyn requests your presence. She wishes to give her statement." Poirot nodded. "I will attend shortly, but first, Monsieur Davin, may I ask you a question?" "Yes, sir," the butler replied, straightening. "Sir Alister had a visitor tonight, did he not?" Davin froze. His hands stiffened, his breathing caught. I don't know, sir. I was instructed not to disturb him." Poirot stepped closer. "Ah, but you are a good servant. You observe everything, The truth, if you please." Davin hesitated, swallowing hard. "A woman, sir. I did not see her face. She wore a long coat, a hat. She said Sir Alistair was expecting her." Poirot's eyes gleamed. And did he expect her? Davin hesitated again. "He seemed afraid, sir. Terribly afraid. When she arrived, he asked to speak with her in private. He dismissed all staff from the corridor." Poirot exchanged a glance with Inspector Graves. "Merci," Poirot said softly. "You have been very helpful." The butler withdrew silently. Poirot turned back to Graves. "You see, Inspector, this was no ordinary appointment. Sir Alistair did not want anyone to know who the woman was, and fear drove him to secrecy." He walked slowly around the desk again, studying the angle of the body, the splatter pattern, the positioning of the weapon. The attack was sudden. Sir Alistair was sitting when the killer approached. The blow was forceful, delivered by someone with a strong hand, or strong intention. Poirot gently touched Sir Alistair's hand. No signs of struggle. He trusted the killer. He allowed them close enough to strike without raising alarm. He stood straight and clasped his hands neatly. "This is a murder of betrayal." Graves exhaled slowly. "So, where do we start?" Poirot smiled faintly. "With the truth, Inspector, and the truth always begins with the people. Summon the household to the drawing-room. We shall speak to every soul under this roof." Graves nodded and left to gather the suspects. Poirot remained in the study a moment longer. He stared at Sir Alistair's frozen expression, the widened eyes, the half-open mouth, the face of a man who recognized his killer in the final instant. Poirot whispered quietly, "You knew who killed you, mon ami, but do not worry. Hercule Poirot will uncover which promise was broken, and by whom." The fire crackled. The storm raged. And in the silent study, Sir Alistair Wycliffe kept his final secrets. Chapter 2. Shadows in the Drawing Room. The drawing room of Greycourt Manor was a place built for elegance. High ceilings crowned with ornate plasterwork, velvet curtains in deep burgundy, a chandelier whose crystal drops glittered faintly in the stormlight. But tonight, elegance was drowned beneath tension so heavy it felt like mist in the air. As the grandfather clock ticked in solemn beats, Hercule Poirot entered, hands folded neatly before him, eyes sweeping across the assembled faces. Inspector Graves stood near the doorway, trying to maintain an aura of authority. But even he knew it. Tonight, the rooms of Greycourt Manor belonged to Poirot. Seated closest to the fireplace was Lady Evelyn Wycliffe, the widow. She was tall, graceful, remarkably composed for a woman whose husband lay murdered upstairs. Her silver-blonde hair was arranged in a perfect chignon, but her eyes, cold, sharp, betrayed a storm within her that rivaled the one beating at the windows. Across from her sat Michael Harrow, Sir Alistair's young protégé. His hands fidgeted constantly. He wrung them, tapped his fingers on his knee, pushed his hair back, even when it didn't need fixing. His entire body was trembling slightly, though whether from fear, guilt, or grief, Poirot had yet to determine. Standing near the liquor cabinet was Dr. Felix Arden, the family physician. His eyes were dark, his posture stiff, and his expression unreadable. He poured himself a measure of brandy with hands steadier than the others. Shock, he had said earlier. But Poirot suspected it was something else, something colder. At the far corner, trying to make herself small, stood Clara Davin, the young maid. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her apron was wrinkled from nervous twisting. She held the edge of her sleeve like a lifeline. The last to arrive was Beatrice Rowan, Sir Alistair's business partner. Her arrival was dramatic. Rain-slick coat half open, hair a mess from the storm. her breath ragged as though she had run the length of the manor. She offered no apology, only brushed past the others with a curt nod and leaned against the mantelpiece. 6 people in total, 6 potential liars, 6 potential killers. Poirot stood in the centre of the room like a conductor ready to summon the first note. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began softly, "you already know why I am here. Sir Alistair Wycliffe lies dead in his study, murdered by someone in this house. The storm, you see, made escape impossible." He tapped a finger to his temple. "Thus the killer remains among us." A murmur passed through the room. Michael swallowed audibly. Clara sniffled. Beatrice crossed her arms defiantly. Poirot raised one hand. "I ask for your patience and your honesty. We shall begin with a simple question. What was your relationship with Sir Alistair on the day of his death?" His eyes landed first on Lady Evelyn. "Madame," he said gently, "you were his wife. Tell us, did Sir Alistair expect a visitor tonight?" Lady Evelyn's lips tightened. "If he did, he told me nothing of it. Alistair and I—" She paused, choosing her words. "We led separate lives in many ways. He had his work, his correspondence, his private meetings. I did not question them." Poirot tilted his head. "A practical arrangement. And were his secrets agreeable to you?" "Hardly." A flicker of bitterness flashed across her features. "But a wife in our society, Monsieur Poirot, has limited choices when her husband prefers shadows to companionship." Poirot bowed slightly. "Merci, Lady Wycliffe." He turned his gaze to Michael Harrow. "Monsieur Harrow, you were as close to Sir Alistair as a son, no? He trusted you." Michael nodded, but his voice wavered as he answered. Yes, he trusted me. At least, I think so. I owe my career to him. He mentored me, guided me, supported me. I had no reason to harm him." Poirot stepped closer. "Tell me, did you see him this evening?" Michael hesitated. Too long. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "The truth, s'il vous plaît." Michael exhaled shakily. I did see him, briefly, around 7. He summoned me to ask about some documents Beatrice sent. He was already agitated, unusually so. I thought it was business stress, but—" Michael's gaze flicked toward Lady Evelyn. "Perhaps it was something else." Beatrice scoffed loudly. "Don't drag me into this." Poirot held up a calm hand. "We shall come to you shortly, mademoiselle." Next, Poirot turned to Dr. Arden. "Doctor," Poirot said mildly, "you claim to have been the last to see Sir Alistair alive. What transpired between you?" Dr. Arden sipped his brandy before answering. "He complained of chest pains earlier today. I examined him this afternoon. Later, he summoned me again to discuss a prescription. Nothing unusual." Poirot raised an eyebrow. "And yet, you have not explained why he appeared so fearful this evening." Dr. Arden's composure faltered for just a moment, barely perceptible, but Poirot saw it. The doctor adjusted his collar. "People have fears, Monsieur Poirot. I am not responsible for them." Poirot stepped back. "But you are responsible for your honesty, doctor." The doctor looked away, jaw clenched. Poirot now faced Clara, the maid. Her hands trembled violently when he approached. "Clara," he said gently, "you were close to Sir Alistair, yes? You have served this household for many years." I didn't kill him," she whispered. "I swear it. Sir, he was good to me, kind." Poirot nodded encouragingly. "Tell me what you saw." Clara's breath hitched. "He told me earlier today that someone had written to him. Someone dangerous. Someone he had wronged before." A ripple of tension shot through the room. Lady Evelyn stiffened. Beatrice's eyes narrowed. Dr. Arden's hand tightened around his glass. "And who was this person?" Poirot asked quietly. I don't know, Clara whispered. He didn't tell me. Only that they threatened to come tonight. Poirot folded his hands. Merci, Clara. Finally, he turned to Beatrice. Mademoiselle Rohan, you arrived unusually late. The storm, you said, delayed you. Beatrice lifted her chin defiantly. I don't answer to you. Poirot's expression didn't change. Nevertheless, mademoiselle, you came to the manor shortly before the body was discovered. Why? Business, she snapped. Sir Alistair and I had urgent matters to discuss. What matters? Poirot asked. The factory expansion. Poirot's head tilted. Curious. Michael Harrow mentioned the same. Yet the documents you submitted were several days old. Why would Sir Alistair demand your presence tonight? Beatrice's expression tightened. Her fingers dug into her arms. He didn't, she admitted finally. I came because I received a letter, anonymous. It said that Sir Alistair intended to accuse me of fraud, that he wanted to remove me from the company. I came to confront him. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Ah, and did you confront him? Beatrice swallowed. No, by the time I arrived, the butler said he was occupied. With whom? Poirot asked. Beatrice's voice softened, troubled. He didn't say. Poirot nodded and began pacing slowly across the room, his hands clasped behind his back. Silence settled heavily as he absorbed every word, every gesture, every lie poorly disguised as truth. After a moment, he stopped. Each of you, he said, has given me valuable information. And yet, mon Dieu, so much remains hidden. He turned to the fireplace. The flames flickered, illuminating the uneasy faces gathered behind him. Poirot spoke without turning. Sir Alistair was visited tonight by a woman wearing a coat and hat. A woman whose perfume lingered in the study. A gardenia fragrance. Lady Evelyn stiffened, visibly, though she attempted to conceal it. Poirot continued. Someone tore a note from Sir Alistair's hand, one accusing them of breaking a promise. Someone attempted to destroy it. Poirot turned suddenly. Someone feared what Sir Alistair intended to reveal. Michael jumped. Beatrice paled. Dr. Arden's glass slipped, clinking loudly against the mantel. Poirot stepped toward Lady Evelyn. His voice softened. Madame, you wear gardenia perfume. A murmur swept through the room. Lady Evelyn's expression remained steady. That proves nothing, monsieur. Half the women in society wear gardenia. Poirot smiled gently, but not in a manner full of secrets, on a night when your husband feared a woman from his past. Lady Evelyn's eyes flashed. What are you implying? Poirot raised a hand soothingly. Nothing yet, madame, but this flower, it is a clue, a small one, but a vital one. He turned to the others, voice calm but commanding. Tonight, Sir Alistair Wycliffe was murdered by someone he trusted. The killer sat with him, drank tea with him, spoke with him before striking. The killer sought to hide their purpose behind shadows and rain. Inspector Graves stepped forward. We'll need alibis for the hours between 6 and 9. Michael Harrow looked down. I was in my room. Alone? Graves pressed. Michael nodded. Clara spoke quietly. I was preparing the dining hall. Lady Evelyn folded her hands. I was in my private sitting room. Beatrice shrugged. On the road, then at the front entrance. Dr. Arden said nothing. Poirot pivoted sharply to face him. Doctor, voter alibi. Dr. Arden's jaw hardened. I was in the smoking room reading. Alone? Yes, he snapped. Poirot inhaled deeply. How convenient it is, Inspector, that every suspect finds themselves without a witness. Graves sighed heavily. Poirot walked toward the window, observing the raindrops trailing like ghostly fingers down the glass. The killer, he said, did not expect me to be summoned tonight. They believed the storm would delay the police, allowing time for a cleaner escape. But fate, you see, intervenes. He turned, studying each face. Someone here knows more than they admit. At that moment, just as Graves prepared to speak, just as Beatrice shifted as if to defend herself, a shrill scream pierced the manor, a woman's scream. It sliced through the drawing room, through conversation, through the storm outside. Poirot froze. Clara gasped. Lady Evelyn shot to her feet. Graves lunged toward the hall. Poirot whispered, "Mon Dieu, another!" He hurried after the inspector. The household followed, footsteps echoing sharply against the marble. The scream came again, high, terrified, desperate, from the upper floor. Poirot reached the staircase first, climbing swiftly despite his age. They reached the landing. The scream had come from Lady Evelyn's bedroom. Poirot grabbed the handle, pushed open the door, and stopped short. Inside, the room was in shambles. The jewellery box overturned, clothes scattered, a perfume bottle smashed across the floor, and Clara stood in the centre of the room, shaking violently, pointing at the destruction. "It's her," she whispered. "It's the woman who came tonight." Poirot stepped forward. "Clara," he said calmly, "what do you see?" She pointed at the broken bottle. The scent filled the room. Overwhelming, unmistakable, gardenia. Poirot inhaled slowly. "The woman," Clara whispered, voice trembling. "She was here, in this room." Poirot's gaze hardened. The puzzle was deepening, spiralling into old secrets and new lies. He spoke softly, almost to himself. "The killer believes they can frighten their way to safety. They are mistaken." Chapter 3. The Scream Upstairs. A single scream ripped through Greycourt Manor, high, shrill, and soaked in terror. It pierced the heavy silence like a blade through velvet. The sound froze everyone in place. Lydia Moreau clutched the edge of the settee. Eleanor Wycliffe staggered and pressed a trembling hand to her chest. Gregory Blackwood cursed under his breath, and even the ever-cool Edgar Hawthorne momentarily lost the rigid composure of his polished exterior. Hercule Poirot, however, did not freeze. He pivoted instantly toward the staircase, his gleaming shoes already moving with surprising speed. "Upstairs," he said sharply. "Someone is in danger." Inspector Graves, slightly slower to react but propelled by the urgency in Poirot's tone, followed him, coat-tails flapping behind. The hall felt colder as they ascended, each step burdened with the mansion's ancient groans. Shadows clung to the corners like silent watchers. The storm outside lashed at the windows, adding its own chaotic percussion to the rising tension within. Halfway up the stairs, they heard sobbing. Poirot raised a hand signalling caution. A figure stumbled into view at the top of the landing. Eleanor Wycliffe's maid, a thin young woman named Clara. She collapsed to her knees upon seeing them. "Monsieur Poirot!" she gasped, her face white as moonlight. It's Miss Eleanor. Something is wrong, terribly wrong." Poirot crouched beside her. "Calm yourself, mademoiselle. Tell us, what happened?" Clara gulped air, visibly shaking. I was bringing her tea. She asked me to leave it at the door, but then I heard this horrible scream. It came from her room." Tears spilled freely. I was too afraid to go inside." Poirot placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Fear is natural, but now we must see." He rose, motioned to Graves, and moved quickly down the corridor. Thick carpets muffled their steps, but the oppressive silence ahead seemed to swallow their presence entirely. Eleanor's bedroom door was slightly ajar. Poirot pushed it open. The room was in disarray, a stark contrast to the meticulously kept chambers of the manor. A lamp lay smashed on the floor, casting fractured shadows across the walls. Curtains flapped violently from the open balcony door, letting in cold rain and the wild scent of the storm. The wind whipped the papers on her dresser into a frenzy, and Eleanor Wycliffe stood in the centre of the room, shaking uncontrollably. Her nightdress was wrinkled and damp from sweat and rain spray. Her eyes were wide, fixed on something on the carpet. Poirot's gaze followed hers. There, in the middle of the room, lay a broken photograph frame. The glass had shattered outward, as if struck with force. Beside it was a slip of paper, a note. But it was the image beneath the broken glass that drew Poirot's attention. A photograph of Sir Alistair Wycliffe and a woman, beautiful, poised, and unknown to Poirot. The woman's face had been violently slashed through with something sharp. Poirot knelt, studying it. "Madame Eleanor," he said gently as he stood again, "are you harmed?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. Inspector Graves approached her cautiously. "Lady Wycliffe, did someone enter your room?" Her voice was faint, barely more than air. "Not someone," she said. "Something." Poirot's brows lifted. "Something." She pointed a trembling finger toward the balcony. "I heard footsteps, slow, dragging, then whispers. I turned, and the door blew open. The photograph fell and—" She shivered violently. "I saw a shadow, a dark shape, watching me." Clara whimpered behind them. Poirot walked toward the balcony, careful not to disturb the shards of glass or the note. Rain streamed from the roof, soaking the floorboards. The balcony railings glistened under flashes of lightning. "Footprints," Graves muttered, kneeling beside Poirot. "Look, someone's been out here." Indeed, faint impressions trailed toward the far corner of the balcony. Bare footprints, impossibly pale in the wet sheen of the marble. But they faded abruptly, vanishing at the edge. Poirot leaned over the railing. The drop below was steep but not deadly. Hedges and a sloped garden lay beneath. In the rain, visibility was nearly non-existent. Poirot stepped back inside. "Close the doors," he instructed, "and lock them." Clarifying, he added, "We do not yet know if the intruder came or went by this route. The scene must remain undisturbed." Graves nodded and secured the doors. Poirot turned to Eleanor, who was now seated on the edge of her bed, breathing hard. "Madame, forgive me for intruding at such a fragile moment, but I must ask, who is the woman in the photograph?" A beat of silence. Eleanor's gaze dropped to her hands. "Her name was Isabelle Moreau," she whispered. Poirot's head tilted. "Moreau? As in Lydia Moreau?" "Yes." Her voice seemed smaller. "She was Lydia's older sister, and Alistair's, former fiancé." Poirot's moustache twitched as he absorbed this. "She died 12 years ago," Eleanor continued. "A drowning accident. Alistair never spoke of it again, but he never stopped mourning her either." Poirot studied her carefully. "And what relation have you to this tragedy, madame?" Eleanor looked up, and for a fleeting second, Poirot saw raw pain, jealousy, guilt, and fragile hope colliding in her eyes. "I married a man who loved a ghost," she said, "and now that ghost seems to have returned." Clara gasped. Graves rolled his eyes slightly, but Poirot did not dismiss the statement. "I assure you, madame," he said softly, "ghosts do not leave footprints." Graves cleared his throat. "Whoever was here, why scare Lady Wycliffe? What were they looking for?" Poirot bent and retrieved the slip of paper beside the photograph. "Perhaps," he murmured, "the answer is here." It was a note, written in black ink. The handwriting was elegant, looping, unmistakably feminine. It read, "You promised you would choose me." A chill rippled through the room. Eleanor's breath caught. That was Isabelle's handwriting. I recognize it from her letters. Clara cried out again. Graves shook his head. "Impossible! She's been dead for over a decade." Poirot remained quiet for a long moment, turning the note in his gloved hands. Rain pattered against the balcony doors like restless fingers. "Inspector," he said finally, "have this note examined for age, ink composition, and paper quality. We must determine whether it is truly old or recently forged." Graves nodded and left to arrange it. Poirot now focused on Eleanor. "Madame, you said you heard whispers. Did you understand the words?" She hesitated. "No, not clearly, but the voice was strange, hollow, like someone was speaking from far away." Poirot's gaze swept the room again. Broken glass, scattered papers, the open balcony, the photograph deliberately damaged. Nothing about this felt random. "This was not an apparition, madame," he said gently. "This was a message." Eleanor grabbed his sleeve. "Monsieur Poirot, am I in danger?" Poirot placed his other hand over hers. "Not if I can prevent it, but you must answer my questions honestly." She nodded slowly. "First, what was your relationship with Isabelle Moreau?" Eleanor swallowed. "Distant, but strained. She resented me. Everyone knew I admired Alistair even before she died." Poirot nodded, unsurprised. "And your relationship with Lydia Moreau?" Eleanor hesitated. "Cordial, but with tension. She always believed Alistair betrayed her sister, but after Isabel died, Lydia left the country for years. She only returned last month." Poirot folded his hands behind his back. "One more question, madame. Why was this photograph in your room and not your husband's?" The answer came softly, reluctantly. "I found it in his desk earlier today," she said. "Hidden. I confronted him. I was angry. Said," her voice cracked, "he said he had made a promise long ago. One he could never break." Poirot nodded, understanding far more than she realized. "And then he died," she whispered. "And now she comes back to claim him even in death." Poirot soon pulled Clara and Graves aside outside the room, leaving Eleanor with a blanket and a calming tonic. Clara hovered protectively at her mistress's bedside. Once in the corridor, Poirot spoke quietly. "Clara, you said you heard the scream from the hallway. Did you see anyone else on the upper floor?" Clara shook her head. "No, monsieur, but I saw a door closing, down the far corridor. I thought nothing of it." Graves frowned. "Which door?" she pointed. "The old guest room. No one has stayed there in years." Poirot exchanged a loaded look with Graves. "We go at once." They moved together down the corridor. The wind outside surged, rattling the window panes like impatient hands. The old guest room door stood closed but not locked. Poirot entered first. The room smelled of dust, lavender, and abandonment. Sheets covered the furniture, and moonlight cut through the gaps in the curtains like pale blades. But something was wrong. Poirot crossed the room and touched the curtain fabric. "Damp," he said quietly, "from the rain." Graves approached. "So someone was in here." Poirot crouched before the window, which had a partial view of Eleanor's balcony. The latch was unfastened. He traced faint smudges along the sill. "A vantage point," he said. "Someone watched Eleanor's room from here, and when she discovered the photograph, they fled." Clara's voice trembled. "But how did they get upstairs without being seen?" Poirot stood, brushing off his gloves. "There are service staircases, hallways locked decades ago, and a household with secrets. Do not worry, mademoiselle. They will be found." Graves sighed. "So what's our working theory? Someone trying to scare Eleanor? Or something more?" Poirot adjusted his cuffs. "We must consider all possibilities. But I tell you this, Inspector. The scream was real. The terror was real. The intruder was real. He paused. But the ghost? No, that was a performance. They left the room and descended the staircase once more. The manor seemed alive with unrest. The storm raged harder, as though determined to echo the chaos inside. In the drawing room, the remaining guests waited in a tense cluster. Lydia Moreau stood apart from the others, her eyes storm-dark and unreadable. Gregory paced like a caged animal. Hawthorne sipped a drink he clearly didn't want. When Poirot entered, everyone turned. "What happened?" Lydia demanded sharply. Poirot studied her face, the stern composure, the hidden fury. "There was an incident," he said, "but Lady Eleanor is unharmed." "Harmed by what?" Gregory snapped. "There's no one else in this mansion, unless you're suggesting a phantom killed Alistair and now chases the rest of us." Poirot raised a calming hand. "Monsieur Blackwood, your temper does you no favours. Rest assured, we pursue the truth." Lydia's voice cut through the tension like a blade of ice. "Was it Isabel?" The room fell silent. Poirot met her gaze directly. "Isabel Moreau has been dead for 12 years, madame." "Then someone is using her," Lydia said quietly. "Someone who wants us to remember her. Someone who wants us to suffer." Poirot stepped closer. And why would someone wish that? Lydia inhaled slowly. "Because Alistair's betrayal ruined her life, ruined all our lives." Poirot observed the tremor in her fingers, the hardened set of her jaw. A storm brewed behind her composed exterior, one not unlike the tempest battering the manor walls. Poirot did not accuse. He simply nodded. "The past, madame, has a habit of returning, but it is not the past that kills. It is the present." He turned back to the others. "I must ask that none of you retire until I have spoken individually with each of you." Graves groaned. "This is going to be a long night." Poirot smiled faintly. "The night is merely a stage on which the truth performs." He walked back toward the staircase, stopping at the base. His voice carried clearly through the hall. "And make no mistake, the truth is performing. Tonight someone attempted to terrify Lady Eleanor into silence, but instead they have revealed themselves more than they intended." He glanced up to the balcony where Eleanor had stood moments earlier. "And I, Hercule Poirot," he said softly but firmly, "do not miss a single clue." Behind him, the light flickered as thunder boomed. From somewhere deep within the manor came the faint creak of a door, one not opened by any of them. Poirot's eyes sharpened instantly. The hunt had only begun. Chapter 4. The Woman in the Photograph. The fire in the drawing room had burned low, leaving only a faint glow pulsing within the embers, like the last breath of a dying heart. Hercule Poirot stood before the hearth with his hands clasped behind him, his reflection wavering in the tall glass cabinet opposite. The others gathered reluctantly, pulled in by his quiet command more effectively than any summons could have achieved. The photograph he recovered from Eleanor Wycliffe's room lay on the mantelpiece in a hardly noticeable frame. Yet every eye in the room was drawn to it, compelled by the presence of the woman whose image had set the night spiraling into chaos. Isabel Moreau. In the dim light, her eyes seemed darker, deeper. Her expression held a serenity that felt almost accusatory. The jagged slash across her face, the damage done upstairs, gave her an eerie, almost vengeful half-smile. Poirot turned slowly. "Mes amis," he began, "the woman you see here, Isabel Moreau, is at the heart of this mystery. Whether she is the motive, the memory, or the message, we cannot yet be certain." Lydia Moreau stiffened at the mention of her sister. Her chin lifted, brittle as porcelain. "She should be left in peace," she said sharply. "She endured enough in life without her memory being exploited now." Poirot studied her, filing every flicker of emotion for later. Inspector Graves crossed his arms. What I don't understand is why this photograph was in Eleanor's room, and not the study where Sir Alistair died. If the killer wanted to make a point, why move it? Poirot's gaze slid toward Eleanor, who stood pale and fragile near the window. Because the message was for Lady Eleanor, he said. A personal attack. Eleanor flinched. She wrapped her arms tightly around herself. I don't understand why anyone would want to frighten me. I've done nothing to deserve this. But others might believe differently, Poirot said gently. Gregor Blackwood, ever restless, paced in front of the sofa, running a hand through his hair. Look, Poirot, this is all well and good, psychological games and ghost stories. But how does it connect to Alistair's death? If someone wanted Eleanor dead, why kill him? Poirot lifted one brow. Perhaps it is not death they wish for Eleanor, but torment. Lydia's voice cut sharp. My sister suffered enough torment. If someone here is using her memory to manipulate— She stopped abruptly, swallowing her anger. Poirot's eyes stayed on her, calm but piercing. Madame Moreau, he said softly, I would like you to tell us about your sister. The silence that fell was heavy. Lydia's hand tightened around the silver locket at her neck. Poirot noticed it was old, ornate, and engraved. Lydia hesitated, then exhaled, sinking slowly onto the edge of a chair. Her poised exterior cracked just slightly. Isabel was everything I was not, she said quietly. Gentle, trusting, she believed in love, foolishly sometimes. Her lips twisted. When she met Alistair Wycliffe, she thought she had found her destiny. Did he love her? Poirot asked. Lydia looked away. He said he did. But you doubt? Poirot prompted. She pressed her lips tightly. I doubt he loved anyone but himself. Eleanor flinched again. Gregor muttered something under his breath, but Lydia continued. She waited for him, believed his every promise, even when he delayed their marriage, even when he avoided announcing it formally. Isabel thought he was simply overwhelmed, or cautious, or loyal to his responsibilities. Lydia's voice grew brittle, but then Eleanor appeared. All eyes shifted to Eleanor, whose breath hitched. Poirot remained still, calm as water. Isabel confronted Alistair, Lydia said. She begged him to be honest. He told her he still loved her. He promised he would choose her. She looked directly at Eleanor now. And yet a month later, he announced his engagement. Eleanor shook her head. I didn't know. I swear it. Lydia's expression flickered, pain mixed with disbelief. Poirot interjected before the tension could shatter the air. And then came the drowning. Yes, Lydia said. We were visiting friends at Lake Raventon. Isabel wandered to the water late one evening. Her voice cracked. They found her the next morning. Was it ruled an accident? Poirot asked. Officially, Lydia said, but I never believed that. Gregor stopped pacing, staring. Inspector Graves frowned. Are you suggesting suicide? Lydia only closed her eyes. She loved him too much to leave without hope, and she was terrified of deep water. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. Yet she died in it. A poetic tragedy, Hawthorne murmured from his chair, swirling his drink. Heartbreak often inspires dramatic exits. Every head whipped toward him in shock and distaste. Hawthorne raised his free hand casually. Merely an observation. Poirot stepped forward. Monsieur Hawthorne, you seem less affected by these revelations than most. Hawthorne gave a thin smile. I do not indulge in melodrama. The past is gone. Isabel is gone. Alistair is gone. Only the present remains, and the present demands logic. Poirot studied him. Logic, yes, but also humanity, a quality you reveal sparingly. Hawthorne's smile tightened. Poirot turned back toward the photograph. This image was placed carefully, chosen, used. Whoever orchestrates these events knows the emotional wounds within this manor and is using them as weapons. Graves tugged at his collar. So let's work through motives. We have anger at Alistair, jealousy, betrayal, revenge. But who benefits from terrifying Eleanor? And what does Isabel have to do with his murder? Poirot slipped his hands into his pockets. That, Inspector, is what I must discover. But we begin with the photograph itself. Where was it, originally? Locked in Alistair's old desk, Eleanor said, in the study. Poirot nodded. And who had access to this desk? Graves answered, anyone in this household, honestly. The lock was old, easy to pick. Or someone knew the combination, Poirot added, someone close to him. Lydia exhaled sharply. Let us not pretend. Alistair kept mementos of Isabel, hidden everywhere. Letters, ribbons, a diary he once insisted on burning but never did. A diary? Poirot repeated. Yes, Lydia said. Isabel kept one all her life. It vanished after she died. Poirot's head snapped up. Vanished how? He pressed. Lydia shrugged, though her expression was pained. No one knows. Perhaps she dropped it before the drowning. Perhaps someone took it. Poirot locked eyes with her. Or perhaps someone feared what it contained. A murmur spread through the room. Gregor spoke suddenly, his voice low. Isabel told me everything. Everyone turned to him. Eleanor's face drained of colour. Hawthorne's brows lifted. Lydia's hand trembled around her locket. Poirot approached Gregory. Tell me, monsieur, he said, what is it you know? Gregor swallowed. Isabel came to me the night before she died. She was distraught, crying. She said Alistair lied to her, lied to everyone, that she had proof. His voice wavered. She said she was going to confront him one last time. Proof? Poirot repeated. Of what? Gregor shook his head helplessly. She never told me. But she died that very night, Poirot said softly, and her diary disappeared. Gregor nodded, guilt flickering in his eyes. Poirot paced slowly around him. Monsieur, forgive me, but why would Isabel confide in you? Gregor hesitated, because she trusted me. Poirot stopped. More than that, I think. Gregor's jaw tightened. I was fond of her. Lydia let out a bitter laugh. He was hopelessly in love with her. Gregor shot her a warning look. Poirot's eyes glimmered. Unrequited love is a powerful fuel for both loyalty and resentment. Gregor clenched his fists. I had no reason to harm Alistair. That man barely knew I existed. But you knew he hurt Isabel, Poirot said gently, and she died because of it. Gregor looked away, breathing hard. Poirot placed a hand on his arm. I do not accuse you. I only observe. And I observe that Isabel is the thread connecting all of you. Her memory binds you here tonight like a ghost, one someone is attempting to resurrect. Hawthorne scoffed. Or simply a convenient excuse to manipulate the emotions of a fragile household. Grief makes fools of us all. Poirot did not respond. Instead, he picked up the photograph and examined it once more. The edges were not merely torn, they were burnt, charred slightly, as though someone tried to destroy it before choosing instead to display it. Ah, Poirot murmured, this is most interesting. Eleanor stepped forward nervously. What is it? Poirot traced a finger along the back. The photograph was once inside another object, a journal perhaps, something bound, exposed to heat. Lydia inhaled sharply. Isabel's diary. Poirot nodded slowly. Yes, he said, This photograph was removed from it recently, very recently." Graves leaned in, meaning the diary is still somewhere in this house. Poirot's eyes shone. "And someone has found it." A collective breath filled the room. "Who?" Eleanor whispered. Poirot looked at each of them in turn, his gaze sharp enough to cut glass. "That," he said, "is what must be discovered before the killer strikes again." Another thunderclap shook the walls. Gregor stumbled back. "You mean Isabel's diary contains the motive for Alistair's murder?" Poirot bowed his head slightly. "It contains the secrets Isabel carried to her grave, and secrets, Monsieur Blackwood, are the most dangerous weapons of all." In the sudden silence that followed, the grandfather clock chimed the hour. Slow, heavy, echoing through the halls like a warning. Poirot turned back toward the fire. "We are hunting a person," he said quietly, "who wants the past to bleed into the present. Someone who believes Isabel Moreau deserves justice or vengeance." His gaze hardened, "and they will not stop until that justice is delivered." Lydia closed her eyes. "Then none of us are safe." Poirot nodded once. "You are correct, madame." He looked once more at the slashed, burnt photograph. "The killer," he said, "walks among you even now." And somewhere above them, down an unseen hallway, behind a locked door, another creak sounded. Not from the storm, from a living person. Someone listening, someone waiting, someone who had just learned that Poirot was getting closer. Chapter 5. The threatening letter. The rain had eased, but the manor still groaned beneath the weight of the storm's retreat, like an old beast catching its breath. Hercule Poirot walked the corridor toward Sir Alister's study with deliberate steps. Inspector Graves at his side, lantern in hand. "This is where the answers hide, Inspector," Poirot murmured, "among papers, promises, and lies." Graves sighed. "I hate it when you get poetic. Means trouble." Poirot only smiled. Inside the study, the air was colder than before, the scent of extinguished candles lingering like a whisper of something unfinished. The fireplace had gone dark, leaving the room stripped of warmth. Shelves towered from every corner, their books leaning like tired witnesses. The desk, Alistair's final place of work, remained locked in stillness. Poirot approached it, his gloved hands gliding across the polished surface. "We found the photograph missing, but what else has been disturbed?" He tested a drawer, locked. "Inspector, if you please." Graves produced a small metal tool with the casualness of a man who had opened many locked drawers in his career. With a soft click, it surrendered. Inside, papers lay neatly arranged, contracts, letters, receipts. But Poirot's eyes immediately settled on a small sealed envelope, placed separately at the bottom. It was old, its edges slightly yellowed, but the seal was fresh, unbroken. Poirot lifted it gently. Curious, a letter not yet opened. Graves frowned. "Looks like an old envelope, but a new seal?" "Precisely," Poirot said. "Someone reused an old envelope to disguise the age of the letter inside." He cracked the seal. Inside was a single folded sheet, and written in a woman's elegant script were the words, "Alistair, you swore you would choose me. If you break your promise, the river will take more than one life." Graves's face drained of colour. "Jesus, that sounds like a threat." "Yes," Poirot said softly, "a threat delivered before Isabel's death." Graves bristled. So Isabel threatened him. The Tao contradicts everything Lydia said. Poirot shook his head gently. "No, Inspector. The tone is desperate, not malicious. The river, she feared it. She used its symbolism. And look," he turned the letter, pointing to faint watermarks. "Tears, not rain," Graves squinted. So Isabel wrote this? Poirot tilted his head. Perhaps. Or someone wanted it to appear so. He slipped the letter into a protective folder just as footsteps entered the hall. Lydia Moreau stood in the doorway, her face stiff, but her eyes burning. You found something. Poirot motioned her inside. Graves stepped aside reluctantly. Lydia's gaze fell on the open drawer. Her breath trembled. What is that? Poirot handed her the letter. As she read, tears welled at once, falling onto the page as if answering the stains of the past. I knew she was suffering, Lydia whispered, but I never knew she wrote this. Poirot watched her carefully. Madame, forgive me. But how did Alistair respond to Isabel's despair? Lydia looked up sharply. He didn't. He ignored it, or hid it, just as he hid her letters, her photographs, her existence. And yet, Poirot murmured, someone has now rediscovered these relics, and is using them. Lydia clutched the letter to her chest. Isabel must have confronted him with this, and he kept it. Why? Poirot's eyes glinted. Because secrets serve those who keep them. And this is a secret that could ruin a reputation. Graves cleared his throat. But why resurface now? Poirot turned to him. Because someone wants the truth known. At that moment, Eleanor Wycliffe appeared in the doorway, pale and fragile. She hugged herself tightly, as though the room's cold had crawled under her skin. Poirot, she whispered, Clara found something in my fireplace. Poirot followed her quickly, Lydia and Graves trailing behind. Inside Eleanor's room, Clara stood trembling beside the hearth. In her shaking hands, she held a charred scrap of paper. I saw the ashes glowing, Clara whispered. Someone tried to burn this. Poirot took it gently. What remained was faint, but one sentence was still legible. He will never choose you. He belongs to me. Eleanor staggered back, tears filling her eyes. Isabel wrote that? Poirot did not answer immediately. He compared the handwriting to the threatening letter, identical, but the ink fresh. Graves narrowed his eyes. This wasn't written 12 years ago. Poirot nodded. No, it was written tonight. Lydia gasped. Impossible! Poirot looked at her steadily. Madam, handwriting can be forged, but emotion must be witnessed. He held the burned scrap close. Someone wants Eleanor to believe Isabel despised her. Someone wants to fracture this house, to revive old wounds, and to make Eleanor appear unstable. Eleanor covered her mouth, whispering, Why? Why would anyone hate me so much? Poirot placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Madam, it may not be hatred at all. It may be necessity. Lydia frowned. Necessity? Poirot looked around the room. At the balcony, the broken lamp, the scattered papers. Yes, he said softly. If someone kills a man, they must create a false trail, a ghost, a distraction. He lifted the charred piece again. And what better distraction than the woman whose memory haunts you all? Graves exhaled sharply. So we're dealing with a killer who's also a master manipulator. Poirot nodded. Someone with deep knowledge of Isabel, of Alistair, of handwriting, emotions, and secrets long buried. Lydia's expression hardened. Someone who knew her diary. Poirot smiled faintly. Ah, you understand. Eleanor looked at him through tears. Who could do this? Poirot took a slow breath. Someone who loved Isabel. Someone who hated Alistair. Someone who wishes to punish Eleanor. Someone who knows this house. He looked toward the door. And someone who believes justice must come from the dead. A sudden gust of wind slammed the window shut with a violent crack. Clara screamed. Eleanor fell into Lydia's arms, and Poirot's eyes sharpened. The killer, he said, leaves warnings, but soon they will strike again. Chapter 6. Shadows in the Garden. The storm had dwindled into a soft drizzle, leaving the night drenched in a cold silver glow. The gardens of Moreau Manor, usually pristine and inviting, now looked ghostly. Branches hanging heavy with rain, hedges trembling with every gust, and statues glistening like mourners gathered in silence. Hercule Poirot stepped onto the stone path, cane in hand, his moustache twitching at the scent of mud and wet roses. Inspector Graves followed behind, muttering complaints about the cold. "You're certain this is where the figure was seen?" Graves asked. Poirot nodded. Clara swore she saw someone fleeing from the study windows, and the mud prints outside. They did not appear by magic. Graves grunted. "And here I thought killers preferred dry floors and warm fires." "No," Poirot said softly. "The guilty go wherever their fear drives them." They moved deeper into the garden, lantern lights swaying between sculpted angels and rain-slicked stone benches. The ground bore recent footprints, narrow, deliberate, leading toward the old greenhouse. Poirot crouched, touching the disturbed soil. "A woman's shoe," he murmured, "size small, someone trying not to be seen." Graves leaned forward. "So Eleanor again?" Poirot shook his head. "Madame Wycliffe cannot walk this far without assistance, and her shoes are thicker, with shorter heels. No, this is someone else." The greenhouse loomed ahead, its glass fogged from within, faintly lit by moonlight, filtering through the drifting clouds. Poirot's voice softened. "The heart of secrets, Inspector, is often a place forgotten." They approached quietly. A quick rustle inside froze them both. Poirot raised a hand. Graves reached for the latch. The door creaked open. Inside, the greenhouse smelled of damp earth and dying flowers. Vines curled like ribs of some ancient creature. The broken roof let the rain drip in steady beats onto the soil. And there, at the far end, stood Lydia Moreau. She spun around, startled, eyes wide, clutching a small metal box. "Madame Moreau," Poirot said calmly. "A curious hour for gardening." Lydia swallowed hard. I come here when I cannot sleep. Alistair loved this place." Poirot stepped closer, gaze fixed on the box in her hands. "And the box, madame? Does it also help you sleep?" She hesitated, then slowly extended it. Poirot took it gently. The box was old brass engraved with initials, "I am Isabelle Moreau." Poirot's brow lifted ever so slightly. "Where did you find this?" "It was hidden beneath the roses," Lydia whispered. "I discovered it moments before you arrived." Graves leaned in. "You expect us to believe that? This box is connected to Isabelle, and you just happened to find it tonight?" Lydia's jaw tightened. "Believe what you wish. I am as desperate for answers as anyone." Poirot opened the box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied with a faded blue ribbon. Isabelle's handwriting. Lydia gasped. "I swear to you, I never knew these existed. He kept them from me." Poirot scanned the first letter quickly. It was filled with longing, jealousy, hope, and despair. "These are passionate," Graves muttered. Poirot nodded. "And dangerous. If anyone wished to impersonate her voice or her emotions, these letters would provide perfect material." Lydia's voice cracked. "You think someone stole them before Alistair died?" Poirot closed the box gently. "Madame, someone has been preparing for this, slowly, patiently. Someone who knew where these were buried, someone who understood their power." Lydia stepped closer, trembling. "Poirot, you must believe me. I loved Isabelle. I would never hurt her memory." Poirot observed her carefully. The trembling hands, the strain in her voice, the desperate honesty. "Madame," he said quietly. "I believe you." Relief washed across her face like a soft wind. But before anyone could speak further, a shadow moved outside, swift, like a shape melting into darkness. Graves spun. "Who's there?" He bolted toward the door, but the figure had already vanished, feet splashing into mud, disappearing between hedges. Poirot followed more slowly, listening, each rustle, each breath of wind. "Did you see them?" Graves demanded. Poirot pointed at the ground. "They were watching us, and they left in haste." Small footprints smeared in the mud, the same ones from earlier. "A woman," Poirot murmured, "and she is bold." Lydia wrapped her arms around herself. "Are you suggesting one of us is stalking the garden in the middle of the night?" Poirot looked at her, unreadable. "I am suggesting someone is terrified that truth will surface." The trio made their way back toward the manor. As they approached the terrace, a faint flicker of movement caught Poirot's eye, a curtain falling back into place on the second floor. He stopped. "Someone is watching us," he whispered. Lydia followed his gaze. That was Clara's room. Poirot frowned. "The maid? She's been shaken since Alistair's death, but she is harmless." Poirot said nothing. Inside the manor the air was cold, almost brittle. Voices murmured in distant rooms. Eleanor sobbing softly, the butler whispering to a footman, the reverberations of fear rippling through the entire household. Poirot placed the brass box on a table and turned to Lydia. "Madame, you must lock your door tonight." She blinked. "Why?" Poirot's eyes darkened. "Because tonight the killer grows bold. They expected something to remain hidden in the garden. When you unearthed it, you became a danger." Lydia paled. "You think they will try to silence me?" Poirot glanced at the letters. "Someone has gone to great lengths to revive the ghost of Isabel Moreau, and those who disturb ghosts often face consequences." Graves tightened his grip on his lantern. "Poirot, what's the plan?" Poirot looked toward the grand staircase, listening to the house breathe its secrets. "We watch. We listen. We allow the killer to reveal themselves." "How?" Graves asked. Poirot's voice turned cold and sharp. "By giving them exactly what they fear most." He tapped the brass box. "We let it be known that the letters will be read in the morning." Lydia gasped softly. Graves nodded slowly. "Meaning the killer will try to stop that from happening?" Poirot stepped back, shadows carving sharp angles across his face. "Exactly, mon ami!" He extinguished the lantern. "Tonight, the garden shadows will follow us inside." Chapter 7. Night of Whispers. The manor had settled into an uneasy silence. The storm outside had died down, leaving behind a soft drizzle that tapped against the windows like faint whispers. Hercule Poirot paced the grand hall, cane in hand, eyes scanning each shadow that stretched unnaturally in the flickering light of the chandelier. Inspector Graves followed, muttering about how unsettling the night had become. "Poirot, this is getting out of hand. Someone has been moving through the house all night," Graves said, his voice low. "Ah, but Inspector," Poirot replied, his gaze steady, "the intruder is clever. They wish to remain unseen, to let fear guide our thoughts. That is their power." From the staircase came the softest creak. Both men froze. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Second floor, east wing," Graves frowned. "Eleanor's corridor." "Yes, listen," Poirot whispered, tilting his head. "Another sound. Lighter, softer. They are moving cautiously." Inside Eleanor's room, Clara sat on the edge of the bed, hands pressed over her mouth, eyes wide. I heard footsteps," she whispered, "and voices calling my name." Poirot crouched beside her. "Fear can create illusions, Clara, but sometimes voices belong to the living." A sudden crash from the grand hall made all three jump. Poirot and Graves rushed toward the sound. The chandelier swung slightly, casting sharp shadows across the polished floor. A letter lay on the ground near the entrance, torn partially from the ribbon that had bound it. Graves picked it up. Another warning. Poirot examined it. The handwriting matched the previous threats. "Do not trust the past. It hides more than you see." He straightened, eyes sharp. "This intruder thrives on fear. They wish to keep the household divided, anxious, uncertain. And now they reveal themselves." A shadow flickered along the far wall, quick and deliberate. Poirot gestured to Graves to remain calm. "Observe, mon ami, patience. They are confident but nervous. Every step reveals their intention." The figure approached the brass box containing Isabelle Moreau's letters. Graves tensed, but Poirot's hand lifted slightly to halt him. The intruder's fingers brushed the box. Then, in a sudden movement, they recoiled, caught by the light of dawn, beginning to touch the hall. Lydia gasped. "Who?" Poirot stepped forward slowly, motioning for calm. The intruder turned fully. It was Clara, pale and trembling, her hands shaking. "I only wanted to protect the letters," she stammered. "I didn't want anyone else to find them first." Poirot's gaze softened. "Ah, Clara, fear guided your actions. You moved in shadows to protect, but in doing so, you created chaos." Clara's shoulders slumped. "I only wanted to help, to preserve Isabelle's memory." Lydia approached, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You did. Though it frightened us, you acted with good intent." Poirot nodded. "Precisely. And now the letters are safe, and the household can see clearly. Fear no longer rules these halls." Graves exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders. "I'll admit, I didn't see that coming." Poirot smiled faintly. "One must understand the human heart, Inspector. Fear can manipulate the mind as easily as a murderer manipulates a crime scene. Once exposed, truth restores balance." Outside, the sun began to rise, washing the manor in soft, golden light. Shadows faded. The night of whispers had passed, and the house, scarred but resilient, breathed again in relief. Poirot looked at the gathered group, Eleanor, Lydia, and Clara, and said quietly, "Tonight, the unseen became known, and in knowledge there is freedom." The morning light filled the hall, warm and steady, leaving only the promise of clarity and peace where shadows had once lurked. Chapter 8. The unseen intruder. The manor lay quiet under the pale morning light, but the tension from the previous night lingered like a shadow. Hercule Poirot walked slowly through the grand hall, cane tapping lightly against the polished floor. Inspector Graves followed closely, eyes darting to every corner. "Poirot, I don't like this," Graves muttered. "The intruder could be anyone, and they've been clever enough to evade us so far." Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, Inspector, but the cleverness of fear often reveals itself. The intruder believes they are unseen, but observation can always uncover the truth." From the staircase came a soft rustle, almost imperceptible. Poirot halted, listening intently. "East wing, second floor," he whispered. "The corridor near Eleanor's room." Graves frowned. "You think they're still up there?" "Yes, and they are cautious. Fear makes people careful, but also predictable." A sudden creak of the floorboards echoed, and both men froze. At the end of the hall, a shadow flickered past a doorway, vanishing into the darkness. Poirot gestured for Graves to stay quiet. "Observe. Notice their steps. They wish to avoid detection, yet they cannot resist moving toward the letters." The brass box of Isabel Moreau's letters rested on the hall table, gleaming softly in the daylight. Poirot's eyes lingered on it. "The intruder desires this," he said. "Everything else, the shadows, the whispers, the broken windows, was designed to test reactions." A soft gasp came from the corner. Clara emerged from the shadows, eyes wide and hands trembling. I heard voices," she whispered, "and footsteps, someone moving through the house." Poirot crouched to her level. "Fear can create illusions, yes, but sometimes it reveals truth. Tell me, Clara, did you see anyone?" Clara shook her head. "No, just shadows. But they were close, too close." Poirot's expression sharpened. "Exactly. They wish to remain unseen, yet proximity betrays them. Watch how they behave next." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the west wing. Poirot and Graves rushed toward it. A broken window near the landing allowed a chill breeze to enter. A letter, torn and damp, lay on the floor. Poirot picked it up carefully. "Do not trust the past. It hides more than you see." Graves scowled. "Another warning. Whoever it is, they are bold." Poirot's gaze narrowed. "Bold, yes, but also reckless. They have revealed themselves through fear and action. The intruder cannot resist the letters." A shadow moved again, just beyond the light of the windows. Poirot gestured to Graves. "Patience, they will show themselves if we wait. One who acts from desire and fear is predictable." The figure stepped into the light. Clara's face went pale, hands shaking. Poirot's voice was calm but firm. "Ah, our intruder." Clara's voice trembled. I only wanted to protect the letters. I didn't want anyone else to find them first. I thought I could preserve Isabel's memory." Poirot studied her, softening. "Fear guided your actions, Clara. You moved in shadows, yes, but your intent was to protect, not to harm. That is why your steps betrayed you." Graves exhaled, tension leaving him. So it was her. All the whispers, the shadows, the broken windows. Poirot nodded. "Yes. And now, with the letters safe and intentions revealed, the household may finally breathe freely. Knowledge has triumphed over fear." Outside, sunlight touched the manor walls, dissipating the shadows that had haunted the night. The unseen intruder had become visible, and with it, the terror and uncertainty lifted. Poirot looked at Clara, Eleanor, and Lydia. Let this be a lesson. Fear reveals truth when observed carefully, and intentions, hidden though they may be, cannot remain secrets forever. The manor exhaled in calm, as if acknowledging the restoration of order. The night of whispers was over. Chapter 9. Revelation at Dawn. The first light of dawn filtered softly through the tall windows of Moreau Manor, painting the grand hall in gentle gold and amber. After a night of tension, the house seemed to exhale, but the air still held a trace of unease. Hercule Poirot stood near the brass box containing Isabel Moreau's letters, his posture composed, eyes sharp as ever. Inspector Graves hovered nearby, restless. "Poirot, are we certain the intruder is gone?" Graves asked, scanning the hall. "Yes, Inspector," Poirot replied. "The night revealed the truth. Shadows cannot hide forever, and now the household may see clearly." From upstairs came soft footsteps. Lydia Moreau emerged, her expression pale but determined. "Poirot, the letters, can they really tell us everything?" Poirot gestured toward the brass box. "Oui, madame. They contain Isabel's thoughts, her fears, her warnings, and they were kept carefully so that only the worthy may understand." Eleanor approached cautiously. "Do we read them now?" Poirot inclined his head. "Yes. but with care and attention. Every word matters. Every phrase reveals intent. Lydia untied the faded blue ribbon, gently opening the first letter. Her voice trembled slightly as she read aloud, recounting Isabel's expressions of hope and love, her concerns over secrets and deception, and her warnings about those who might betray trust. Eleanor listened intently, eyes widening with every sentence. Graves leaned closer. So all the tension, the whispers, the broken windows, it was all connected to these letters? Poirot nodded. Oui. Fear was used to obscure truth, but the letters cannot lie. They reveal both the past and the motives of those involved. As Lydia read, the sunlight shifted across the hall, illuminating the faces of the gathered household. The tension that had haunted the night began to soften. Clara stood silently, her hands clasped, guilt and relief mingling in her expression. Poirot's voice was calm yet commanding. And now, the intruder who sought these letters is known. Fear has been confronted, intentions revealed. Clara, your actions, though misguided by panic, were born from care and concern. Let no guilt remain. Clara bowed her head, voice trembling. I only wanted to protect Isabel's memory and to prevent harm to Eleanor. Lydia placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You acted with honesty, Clara. That is what matters. Poirot turned to the others. Notice, mes amis, how fear manipulates perception. The Night of Whispers was a trial, designed to mislead. But truth, once revealed, brings clarity and peace. The sun fully emerged, bathing the hall in warm light. Shadows retreated into corners, and the weight of uncertainty lifted. Graves exhaled, shaking his head in disbelief. I never thought it would resolve like this. All that chaos, and yet calm prevails. Poirot smiled faintly. Oui, Inspector, calm follows revelation. Once fear is faced and intentions understood, the mind rests and justice is quietly restored. Eleanor's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Poirot, will we ever forget the past? No, madame, Poirot replied gently. The past is preserved in memory, but it no longer controls us. Knowledge allows us to act with wisdom and understanding. Isabel's letters are her legacy, guiding those who remain. The household exchanged glances, a sense of unity forming in the warm morning light. Lydia whispered, We have learned so much from her, about honesty, love, and vigilance. Poirot nodded. Indeed, and now the letters are safe, the intruder revealed, and the Night of Whispers has ended. Let the dawn bring clarity, and let all who remain here carry the lesson forward. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the brass box, the letters, and the faces of those gathered. The house felt alive again, at peace, and ready to embrace a new day free of fear. Chapter 10. Justice Restored. Morning sunlight filled Moreau Manor, spilling through tall windows and casting a warm glow over the polished floors. The storm had passed, leaving the gardens glistening with dew and the air fresh and calm. Inside, the tension of the previous nights seemed to lift with the light, though the memory of fear still lingered faintly in every corner. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre of the grand hall, hands clasped behind his back, eyes observing the gathered household. Eleanor, Lydia, and Clara. The brass box containing Isabel Moreau's letters sat safely on a side table, untouched and secure. Inspector Graves leaned against the staircase railing, still trying to process the night's events. Poirot, it's over then? Graves asked, voice tinged with relief. The intruder, the threats, everything. Yes, Inspector, Poirot replied calmly. The intruder has been revealed, intentions understood, and the letters are safe. Fear has been replaced by knowledge. Justice, in its true sense, is restored. Lydia stepped forward, eyes lingering on the brass box. The letters, they tell the full story. Isabel's fears, her warnings, everything she endured. Poirot nodded. Oui, madame. They reveal both the past and the motives of those involved. Understanding brings clarity, and clarity brings peace. Eleanor, still pale from the tension of the previous nights, moved closer to the group. So, all that happened, the whispers, the shadows, the broken windows, was necessary? Poirot's gaze was firm. Not necessary, but inevitable. Secrets left unspoken allow fear to flourish. Once revealed, truth illuminates even the darkest moments. Clara, hands trembling slightly, stepped forward. Poirot. I only wanted to protect Isabel's memory. I didn't mean to frighten anyone. Poirot placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Fear guided your actions, Clara. You acted with care and good intent. That is why your conscience need not bear guilt. The letters are safe, and the household can now see clearly. Graves shook his head in disbelief. I must admit, this is unlike any case I've encountered. All that tension, and yet the resolution is so calm. Calm follows revelation, mon ami, Poirot said softly. The mind finds rest when the truth is known. Justice is not always in punishment. It is in understanding and restoring balance. Lydia and Eleanor exchanged glances, a quiet understanding passing between them. We have learned so much from Isabel, Lydia whispered, about honesty, loyalty, and the strength of love. Yes, Poirot agreed. And now, with the letters preserved, her legacy will continue to guide those who remain. Knowledge is the truest justice. The sunlight shifted, illuminating the brass box and highlighting the intricate handwriting of the letters. The tension that had gripped the house for so long seemed to dissipate entirely, replaced by relief and quiet reflection. Poirot looked at the gathered group. Let this be a lesson. Secrets left unspoken invite fear, but truth brings freedom. Those who act with honesty honor the past. Those who seek clarity find peace. Eleanor's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. Then we move forward, together, with understanding and memory as our guide. The manor itself seemed to acknowledge the change, the walls and floors now bathed in warm light rather than shadow. The brass box, the letters, and the people who had survived the night of whispers all stood as symbols of resilience and truth. Poirot straightened, hands behind his back, voice calm but resolute. Justice has been restored. Fear has been confronted, secrets revealed, and with that, Moreau Manor may finally breathe freely once more. Outside, the gardens glistened under the bright morning sun. The storm was gone, the shadows vanished, and the house stood peacefully agi, testament to truth, courage, and the enduring wisdom of Hercule Poirot.